So I decided to look at the Four Immeasurables today. That was the wonderful talk given by Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi 2 days ago. But it would merit some reflection and meditations on that. If you haven't listened to that talk, if you were not there or didn't listen to it online, or if you want to listen to it, it has been posted online, the recording, so it can be listened to again. Anyway, we can, whether or not you were there or heard it, we can very profitably reflect and discuss that. Would be good to do. Okay, so the first thing is, of course, motivation and posture. Posture, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I hope most of you know about the posture. It is, of course, very important. If we had a longer session, then we could spend 20 minutes or more just on posture. But the main thing is to be upright, but not tight, not uptight. All right, upright, but not uptight. In other words, there's a relaxed quality to the posture. Uprightness, because the energy can flow well, and there's a sense of dignity. There's a sense of not giving up. There's a sense of not allowing the challenges of life and the world to weigh one down and make one feel miserable and indulge in self-pity, which unfortunately is one of our strong attributes, self-pity. We kind of take refuge in that and hold a grudge against the world sometimes, and that's not useful. Why? Because the world actually needs our help. So if we're just sitting there holding a grudge against the world, it's not helping anybody. Not helping ourselves either, of course. And a grudge can be manifested in many ways. How we look, how we dress, how we speak, how we act, how we read and write and everything. So let's not hold a grudge against the world. Let's embrace the world. And that's the meaning of the posture. Actually, it's upright, but also open. Open in the sense, it is open, isn't it? The front of the body is open. We're not wearing armor. Of course, there is bodily armor, according to people who, therapists who work on that. Subtle and gross bodily armor we employ to protect ourselves, and that's understandable. But at least in this posture, we are saying, look, we're going to give a try and open up to the world, because the world needs help. And in helping the world, of course, whether we like it or not, we help ourselves. And if you doubt that, then of course, just experiment. Everything one says is to be experimented with. It's not a sermon, not a commandment. Buddha didn't give commandments. He taught very sophisticated, from very simple to very sophisticated philosophy and psychology. And he did at one point say that everything is aiming towards, of course, one, to alleviate suffering, and two, to get the practitioner to the stage of being a yogi, where that practitioner can then investigate, understand the deepest level of reality, which is what frees us from ignorance, the ignorance that we are caught up in. So what we're looking at today is a preliminary sort of practice, which is, of course, not so preliminary. It's very amazing, but which helps us, kind of really gives us a boost and the confidence and the openness to investigate, to go deeper, to not only love the world, but also to have a lot of enthusiasm for investigating reality. Reality. How things exist. Yeah, how things exist. Who am I? And all of those questions, those important questions. Yeah. So hopefully we can get a bit closer to that and inspire ourselves to investigate further. The reason being also because a lot of modern day spirituality, so-called, or religion, can tend to be a bit superficial. It's very much oriented towards our speed disease. It's a disease, being in such a hurry, actually. Doesn't allow us any time to really stop and take things easy and slowly and mindfully. We're always in a hurry, it seems. Unless we are congenitally very sick or lazy, then maybe we are slow. But basically, we're in a hurry. Our minds are in a hurry. We're encouraged to be in a hurry, of course, to consume and, check things out in a hurry. And so we are given thousands and thousands and thousands of messages a day to remind us of that. Yeah, internal messages and also external messages. So here we're also going to see how what I'm going to call authentic spiritual path involves slowing down and paying attention very carefully to what's happening. Not being in this crazy sort of spin, tsunami-like, whirlpool-like hurry, which drains us physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, every which way. So now is the time to give oneself an hour and a half off of the rat race, the treadmill. Sometimes we forget that we are not rats, that we're really human beings, but we do behave a lot like rats. Sophisticated rats, of course, well-dressed and so-called well-educated and so forth. Yeah, but we're basically on that treadmill of competition, comparing ourselves with images, with others, etc., etc., and in the process going pretty much insane. According to Lord Buddha, we are pretty much insane. Good news, there is good news, is that basically we are sane. Basically we are good. Basically we are Buddha. Yeah, correct. You heard correct. Basically we are Buddha. We have that potential to wake up completely. But that requires our effort, and there's no formula that works the same way for everybody. That's important to know. And the Buddha is as we say, Margdarshak, shows the path. Does not grant us or bless us to achieve the path simply through his own power or blessing. Just as however powerful the sun may be, if we decide to live 10 feet underground, we're not going to feel the radiation of the sun. But if we go up and if we open our doors and windows, then we can receive the benefit. And if there are clouds, of course, there can be temporary clouding, but we know the sun is there. Similarly, we all have the sun of perfect wisdom, awakening within us. That seed is there. It can never be destroyed. This is something extraordinary, but the Buddha said it can never be destroyed because mind is beginningless and endless. That means awareness, consciousness is beginningless and endless. And this seed of Buddhahood is also a part of that continuum of consciousness, temporarily covered by grosser levels of consciousness, but it can never die. It can never be destroyed. It can never even be contaminated. It can only be covered up, like a diamond under dirty rags or in a mountain of filth, or the sun behind clouds. The diamond or the sun, they're not affected. So that's the good news. If there were not that good news, there would be no point. We would be perpetually in a state of ignorance and suffering. So in the posture, we remember these things in this upright, dignified, open posture. And we remember how most beings, most living beings, including animals, are just caught up in their own particular kind of treadmills. where there's a kind of automatic process of just doing what comes about through habit, just engaging in habitual actions of body, of speech, and mind, in terms of thoughts, a lot of thoughts, disturbing thoughts, exciting thoughts, anxious thoughts, occasional loving, altruistic thought, possibly, but soon clouded over with other kinds of thoughts, and a lot of useless thoughts. So we keep on repeating things, which could be well dealt with one thought or two, and we repeat it 100 times. So this is all mentally exhausting and a waste of time. And it's a problem because we begin to believe in those thoughts, and those thoughts become caught up in our sense of who we are, our self-identity, like dust, dirt in a humid environment gradually, as you know, creates this sort of coating on things. So that sometimes when you wash something after many years, you're amazed. Wow, it actually looked like that? I had that experience with a little saxophone playing figure that my uncle had kept for years, and it was so covered with dust. All I had to do was put in a mug of warm water with a little soap, and it came out transformed. And it's now one of my prized worldly possessions. 6 inches, 7 inches high, saxophone playing Rastafarian type with long hair. So anyway, point is, things can get so dirty and dusty that we really forget what they are. We forget, to put it in not very good language, we forget who we truly are, you know, which is something very wondrous and full of radiance, rather than an anxious piece of meat walking around on the planet thinking what is going on. So this is important. This is very important. So we're going to spend a bit of time on the motivation and how to prepare the mind, because if you see, as you know, those of you who are good cooks, and I know there's at least one good cook in the screen in front of me, you have to prepare your kitchen, your ingredients, your saucepans, all the rest. You have to prepare it properly. If you're going to cook well, that is. You're going to just put together a hodgepodge which can pass for good food. That's another matter. But if you're really good at it and care, then you will prepare things very well. So how much, obviously important to prepare our minds for something as precious as equanimity, love, compassion, and sympathetic joy, obviously. So first of all, we should also remember how, as I mentioned, we are sick. We're pretty much insane. You can experiment, try and focus for 3 minutes on your breath, and you'll see how difficult that is, especially if you're in a slightly anxious or restless state. It's just well nigh impossible. So that's not a sign of stability, is it? Then if you look at your thoughts, what kind of thoughts are you having? Even when your best friend is doing very well, then do you have a hint of jealousy here and there? Yes, very, very easily we develop envy, jealousy. So that's not a sign of mental wellness, do you think? Then we're comparing ourselves all the time and making ourselves often feel miserable, especially if we're young and are subscribing to Instagram, TikTok, and all the rest. That's not a sign of mental stability. We keep on harking back into the past and into the future, as if that's where some kind of answer is to be found. We find it hard to open up to people and be clear and kind. So, you know, we're not exactly mentally healthy, according to Lord Buddha. Let's face it. And we love criticizing people, don't we? Behind their back, of course. Anybody. government, politicians, friends, enemies, strangers. We love criticizing. And I don't know many people who like admitting their mistakes and apologizing. I know very few people who know how to apologize. So anyway, these are, I'm just saying, you might consider these signs of lack of really good mental health. But you can debate it, obviously. This is my bias. So anyway, Lord Buddha did say, and the teachers down the Nalanda and Vikramshila traditions for preparing the mind do say this is how we should reflect, that I'm sick, the teachings are the medicine, the teachings, not the teacher, the teachings, and the meaning of them, not the words, and the deeper meaning, obviously, not some superficial aspirin-like relief, the deeper medicine. And then we're prepared to take that deeper medicine with a serious, deep state of mind. And then the people we are listening with or practicing with, they are the helpful nurses and attendants. So we have the doctor, the medicine, and we have the teachings, the nurses and helpers to take the medicine. The Buddha is the doctor. Dharma is the actual antidote to our problems. Or not even antidote, but what we assimilate, what we become, if you like, absorb and become, that is the medicine. Then it can help, especially if one has some kind of affinity and faith in spiritual teachings and in the teachings of Lord Buddha. We could think how wonderful it would be if these teachings, which oneself has found so useful, how wonderful if they could last for a long time. That's a very nice thought to have. How wonderful if these teachings don't just, end with my lifetime. How wonderful if they could continue for a very, very long time and help people, because people desperately need guidance and help. People are insane. People who want to be happy right now are bombing each other, killing each other. And some people are making lots of money, making weapons that are designed to harm and injure and kill people. This is extraordinary, isn't it? Since people want happiness and don't want suffering, isn't this extraordinary? I actually don't need a better example there of mental sickness. Whatever you may call it, it's systemic, you may say now, but how did it become systemic? It started with people's minds. It may not have started with just one person, but it started with people's minds. Having the insecurity and fear and wanting to clobber the opposition, either at the caveman level or now at the nuclear level. Now it's a lot more dangerous, right? So anyway, we were talking about the nectar of the teachings, and that they last a long while because that's what's going to help us. Nothing else is going to help us long term. Vidyaji, you might like to move your cushion a bit, either left or right. So, yeah, it's nice to see people. Thanks for coming. So, yeah, we're talking about how to listen to the Dharma. And then, of course, we listen, hopefully, attentively and not be checking our WhatsApp messages in between or planning too much for this afternoon, tomorrow, while we listen. And what we hear, at least we try and retain it for a little while, not like very powerful rainwater hitting a very parched landscape or clay soil bounces off, but hopefully we can absorb some of what we hear. Of course, if we think it's nonsense, then we should just let it go. Dalai Lamaji always says so wonderfully after his talks, if there's anything useful, wonderful. If not, then just let it go, leave it. You're not obliged to accept or follow what is being said, not at all. Then we should remember the three excellences. And we're working on the first excellence, which is to prepare the mind with a motivation. We've not finished yet, but that's what we're doing. Then we will be engaging in the main body of the session, which is to look at the Four Immeasurables. And then the last part is to dedicate for the welfare of all beings. So why haven't we finished with the motivation? Well, partly because motivation could be very vast, and we haven't really investigated how, we've touched on it, how other beings are in a state of misery for various reasons. They're upset, they're ill, they're sick, they're starving, they are feeling impoverished, even though they might be billionaires. They have interpersonal problems, they have anxiety, most of them afraid of death and the unknown and uncertainty they hate. So anything uncertain makes people very jittery. So therefore we try to control what's happening all the time. So all of this, and then there are people actually killing each other, planning right now. Right now in Ukraine and other places, people are killing each other in all kinds of ways. And planning it, planning destruction, planning control, planning all sorts of things, which are horrendous consequences for our brothers and sisters, men, women, children. Unbelievable, which don't just end, you see, with the action. A killing now, all of this now, plant seeds in the mind, it ripens later. That's how situations like Yugoslavia, for example, within living memory happened. Suddenly, neighbors who have been living peaceably for decades, suddenly enemies. How is that? It's inexplicable apart from karma, collective karma. And of course, triggering actions. But why do actions trigger such deep-seated fears and hatreds? Investigate. Karmic seeds which have been planted. So all these awful karmic seeds right now have been planted in the world. Don't expect them to have any kind of positive result. None of the people, very few who are perpetuating these actions are engaging in any kind of purification of the mind. They will receive the results. On a collective level, it is disastrous. So when you look at that, then one feels actually a little bit upset and, what can I do? Well, what we can do is set our own house in order and do what we can to inspire the people in our lives to behave in a not just rational, but in a kind and wise fashion. And that begins with oneself, right? If one is not being kind and wise, or possibly could we radiate that towards others in the sense that Venerable Priyadarshi mentioned 2 days ago. You just become something so amazing that you don't need to open your mouth and then people are affected by you. Like the Dalai Lama taking the subterranean route to his talk, pokes this Latin American cleaning lady in the stomach and says, "You're fat." And she takes it just the right way and actually changes her life because of who the Dalai Lama is. Most of us can't do that. She would slap us back or being very upset. So anyway, we need to be radiators. Radiation without a radiator, actually. There should be the radiation of kindness and so forth, without feeling there's any kind of radiator. Just environmental generosity, one teacher puts it. Like very strong, I don't know, jasmine or Rat Kirani just pervades the whole environment. There's radiation of that. So yeah, beings need our help, and who's going to help them? God, Buddha? No, sorry. In Buddhism, we don't accept that. Not even Buddha can help people. We have to help people. I mean, by following a lot of what Buddha said, obviously, advised. But if we slow down and pay attention, then I think we begin to realize what other people need, starting with what we ourselves need, which we don't know unless we slow down and pay attention. So think about some of these things. I'll stop talking for a while, reflect on the motivation, and generate a sense of how wonderful it would be if, one's life, and starting with this session, could be of a little benefit to others, or even great benefit. And then let's do a little thought experiment as part of our motivation. You might find it useful. I'll give you some personal example, but you take your own personal example as experience. Now, this morning, I went out to get milk from the market. So two things struck me, apart from a multitude of other things, but two things which seemed relevant. One, I saw, I was, in quite good, I would say, happy mood, as I am often when I'm walking, and there's some very beautiful nature around near where I live. So it was very, very beautiful for me. And I saw this, that there are many dogs roaming around in the morning. There was one in particular which was just sitting in a sort of in dust, often how they just go round and round and prepare their place and then lie down in the dust. So this dog was sitting in the dust, and I was just looking at the dog. I stopped. Sometimes I stop and then I kind of talk to the dog and maybe stroke the dog if it seems appropriate. So this one, I just looked at the dog, and I just felt, okay, it's not only does it not have an owner and doesn't seem very well fed, it wasn't emaciated, but it wasn't very well fed. But I mean, what can that dog do in its life except just carry on in that way? Nobody taking much care of it, it seemed. Not able to investigate anything that might uplift the life. What would uplift his life is maybe, you know, sniffing another dog or some kind of tidbit that it might find by chance in the market. And there again, it didn't look like any kind of alpha dog, so it would have to, it's at the mercy of other dogs as well. So what kind of a life is that? You know? And I thought, and I just felt sad, you know. One was happy, but sad. Sad that this dog, you know, what kind of life is that? Yeah. And I've forgotten the second thing. It may come back later. But think of something you know. Think of something you experienced when you stopped and paid attention and were not whizzing past on your motorcycle or in your car or embedded in your smartphone so you didn't see anything around you. What have you noticed when you've stopped and looked at a person? Now remember the second thing, but first you think about your example. When you stopped and looked at another being, let's keep it at beings right now, not like human or animal, okay? Unless you do have the power to see ghosts, then you can remember that. Something that reminded you of one's own life and the opportunity we have and the somehow the sadness and the stuck quality of certain beings in their lives. And if you need to come back to that, you know, later today after the session, something that stops us and reminds us of others, you know, and what they're going through. Anyway, the second example, and you may then remember something like this. I was coming out of the park, the gateway, to go to the shops, and when you come out of the park, there's this little, you know, a little labyrinth. You have to go left and then right out of the park, this little gateway. So coming in was a very old man with a stick, I would imagine late 70s or 80s. He said Ram Ram. I also said Ram Ram, which I don't usually because I often have some bias against that. But I said Ram Ram to this man because, I don't know, he just struck me very old and it was a big effort for him to come to the park. I could see that. Unfortunately, I was a bit hasty there and I didn't stop and talk to him. Later, I felt I could have said more. Anyway, I said Ram Ram and then went on. But then I felt, and I'd had a quick glance at his face. And so you can, if one were to stop and really look at somebody, then I just use my imagination. What does his face show? You know, are his hands trembling? What sort of morning has he had so far? Who does he live with? Are they kind to him? Is he kind to them? How much effort did it take for him to come out of his home and walk to this park, beautiful park, very slowly? And I wonder how long he stayed in the park before he got tired or needed to empty his bladder or whatever. Being old, likely is he has, prostate issues. So how does that affect him? Does he wet his pants? All of these things, you can think about any old person, old man, woman. What's it like for them? Am I going to get old? Will I shuffle towards the park with my stick in 10, 15 years or less? Less, of course, if there's an injury or I break something. Some people break both their hips and then they have surgery and this and that. Can we imagine that? Especially when we're younger. We can only do that if we slow down and pay attention, can't we? Otherwise, we're just on our own trip. Please reflect and think of something from your own life, or just use your imagination. Some of you will remember from a few years ago when started the Zoom sessions during COVID time. I was mentioning we were working with something from Jeffrey Hopkins' book, A Truthful Heart, in which he was saying very beautifully, he said, look, to be a good meditator, to analyze, to be a good meditator, you have to use your imagination. Sometimes you have to use your imagination a lot to get inside the skin of other people, what they're going through. So please, if you haven't had direct experience of stopping and looking at an old person, then use your imagination. What would it be like? Hopefully you all have had some experience of that. It could be a sick person, it doesn't have to be old, a sick person, a sick animal, whatever touches us. And if you like, you can juxtapose this with some experience you had when, even if for a brief moment, you managed to bring some happiness to somebody, a smile on their face of someone who wasn't smiling, who actually may have been, manifesting a hard time. What's it like to bring a smile to somebody's face, to to make them feel a bit more relaxed and happy. What is that like? Can you remember? Hopefully it's happening every day. It's not something rare. Or you made an animal, obviously, a bit more relaxed and happy, or a child. Mothers must be experiencing this daily, bringing relief and comfort, some happiness to their children, young children. Or spontaneously you make a surprise visit to somebody and give them something, or something they need, cheering words, or could be a material thing or not, whatever. But that sense of reaching out, radiation happening, without any sense of a reward. You're not going because you want something from that person. Maybe you don't even need them to say thank you. And if they do say thank you, it doesn't puff one up. I'm sure we all had some little experience like that. And it could be especially meaningful if it's with a person or an animal that previously there was a little bit of problem, hesitancy to reach out, and one broke that barrier. And one's reminded of one definition of renunciation that a particular teacher gave, that renunciation is letting go of anything that acts as a barrier. Letting go of anything that acts as a barrier between oneself and others. Easier said than done. Society and we ourselves put up a lot of barriers, so many barriers, infinite barriers. Race, religion, caste, color, fear, anxiety, hope, fear, etc., etc., etc. Status, gender. Long list of barriers. Predominantly, of course, governed by fear, insecurity. Sometimes maybe by greed, arrogance, but they themselves may be manifestations of insecurity and fear. And of course, of ignorance. If we understood our true nature, we would be 100% joyful all the time. Of course, joy tinged with sadness, but not the sadness of gloom and depression. Sadness that knows one can long-term do something for beings, although not maybe short-term. I couldn't help that dog this morning. I couldn't help that dog in this life anyway to understand dharma and get going on the path with shamatha, insight, etc. Couldn't teach four immeasurables to that dog or inspire that dog to practice them. On the other hand, to balance that a bit, so many animals, including dogs, have a natural, I would say sympathy, kindness, much more than some humans seem to have. So, of course, we must not judge too rigidly. Mm. Reflect on this for a few more minutes, then we'll take a 5-10 minute break. Before we take our little break, I just want to quote from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's given extraordinary teachings for 40 years and more on great compassion, bodhicitta. More like 50 years, since 1970 at least. He says, and now what he's saying applies to us in India as well. In the West, millions of people suffer from depression. But if you dedicate your life in the morning to numberless sentient beings, there is unbelievable joy and happiness the whole day. Cherishing the I or oneself, opens the door to all suffering, while cherishing others opens the door to all happiness. When you live your life every day for others, the door to depression, relationship problems, and all these things is closed. And instead, there's incredible joy and excitement. With this kind of bodhisattva attitude, you can become wish-fulfilling for others. All sentient beings have been wish-fulfilling and kind to you since beginningless rebirths. And now you become wish-fulfilling for them. From this, all your wishes for happiness are fulfilled. Even your wish to achieve liberation and enlightenment and to benefit others by causing them happiness this life, future lives, liberation, and enlightenment. You become the cause of all this for others. This is how to overcome all problems. Okay. Take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for at least half an hour. We'll have mainly discussion. There's hot water and tea bags and some edibles at the back. Help yourself. Sorry, we can't offer to people online. I'm sure you have storerooms in your own houses. Please take a break. Oh dear. Just to let you know, the sufferings of samsara, a monk who's supposed to be arriving from Bodh Gaya today, his train was supposed to come at 8:15 a.m. So he says, we're just leaving Gwalior now. Reputable sources say 4 to 5 p.m. in Delhi. Okay, that gives me more time to prepare. He's staying with me. No stewards in the sleeper. Oh dear, I've been relying on online status updates. Very good old monk of Lama Yeshe, John Jackson in California. Wonderful monk now. Married, had kids, worked a lot for the center, Vajrapani Institute in the United States. Anyway, so we'll pray for him to have, I hope he gets chai at the stations. Yeah, please have chai or whatever you need now. 10-minute break, folks. We can extend the session to 1 p.m. if you wish. Nice to see you. Okay. Come. Jaane. Abhi jaane. Keep singing. Yeah. Kabir ji ko aap jante hain? Aapko board member, aapke malik. Hello. ये बहुत पुराना है, बहुत पुराना, but it's still relevant. Okay, folks, thanks for your patience. We'll start again. The reason I kept glancing on my mobile earlier, some of you would have noticed, is to check what was happening with this monk coming from Bodh Gaya on obviously a slow train. So, yeah, we haven't done a kind of traditional or even a, yeah, we've looked at the preliminaries to the Four Immeasurables. We haven't really gotten into the Four Immeasurables, but that's okay, because they're all based on, slowing down and paying attention. And if we don't do that, everything else is just nonsense. We're just pretending. We can't be bothered to stop and reflect. Then what are we doing? We're just rushing through things, like fast forwarding somebody's message because we don't have time. Yeah, speeding it up. On my phone, you can speed things up twice. Is that the same on most smartphones? You can speed up on WhatsApp the message 2 times or more. What is it on your phone? Anybody? Twice? If someone sends you a voice message, you can listen to it at normal speed, or 1.5 or 2. More than 2? More than 2, it sounds very strange. But with some people, you have to speed it up because they speak very slowly and cannot get to the point of what they want to say. So sometimes speeding up is useful, but if we speed up too much, then we miss a lot of things. And if we don't look at people, and as I said, at dogs and this and that, then we miss so much. And then what are we going to reflect on? It means we haven't really contacted human beings or animals. Contacted meaning we haven't noticed them. They've whizzed past, like if you're going in a very fast train, what will be the bullet trains now from Ahmedabad to Bombay, you can flit past the countryside without seeing the damage that's been done or whatever, or any beautiful tree or house, you won't see it. Of course, you'll be intent on your destination and looking at your smartphone probably. Anyway, detailed work and CV about the monk who taught the other day is given on the meeting chat. Wikipedia.org, wiki/Tenzin Priyadarshi. Anyway, yeah, it's very good to get more info on this wonderful monk who spoke to us 2 days ago, who is at the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics. Dalai Lama doesn't give his name for many things at all, but he allowed Tenzin Priyadarshi to use his name, which was the sign of the esteem that His Holiness holds Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi in. And those of you who have the time and can read his book, Running Toward Mystery, I'm sure will find it not only a fascinating kind of thriller in one way, but incredibly deep and amazing story about human potential and courage and so forth. Karma, good karma ripening, many things in that book. Okay, so let's have some discussion. Otherwise, there's a danger of me going on and on. And so you can ask questions about something we did today or something that struck you in Venerable Priyadarshi's lecture, which you would like to look at more. So let me just, you can unmute yourselves and speak. Anybody online, first of all, want to ask something? And then I'll come to people at Tushita. I'm so used to online that I've engrossed with the onliners and forget these poor people here. Are you okay, Arunaji? You're praying very hard today? Yeah, are you praying very hard? Okay. Haji, anybody? Neeraj, Naveen, Maya, Ayesha, Samira, Anjali, Dr. Sharon, Anushri, Abhishek, Ashita. Anything? If not, that's also fine.
Sorry, what's the question?
Okay. Yeah, we have a question here. No. Yes.
Okay. You are asking us to come out with questions. I thought you posed a question.
No. If you have anything, any feedback, any question.
So I wanted to ask you, this session spoke about compassion and empathy, for everyone.
Yes.
And then how do you not get overwhelmed? If you were to have compassion for everyone around you, including, stray dogs, etc. How do you not
Good.
get overwhelmed?
So how do you not get overwhelmed? The question is by having compassion and empathy for everyone. Well, it's a very good question. It said even the Buddha of compassion once felt overwhelmed at the extent of human misery or sentient beings' misery, and he started crying. And from his tears, the Buddha Tara was born. But the point is, yes, we can get overwhelmed. And what stops us becoming overwhelmed is the wisdom side, realizing that just as if you felt overwhelmed in a dream, it is a dream. You realize when you wake up, it is a kind of a dream. So when we see in our life that we cannot do what we want to do, we cannot help everyone we want to help, and in fact, we begin to feel exhausted and fed up and angry because some of the people we're helping are also not thanking us or are in return harming us or still behaving like idiots when we've told them how to behave, to be happy, whatever it is. So how do we not get upset and overwhelmed is we have a certain balance and calm within us already, which is what so much of the practice is about, coming from a calm, clear, kind space. What makes us exhausted is that we go out into the street kind of thing, shouting, like the extreme version of that is a procession, let's say. We've gone on a procession for equality or peace, and we're shouting. And we're getting a little angry at people who we think are disturbing the peace, the baddies, the arms manufacturers, the governments, the other side. So we have an enemy, and we have the goodies, and we're making a lot of noise. And so, of course, that's not the way. That's not the way to bring peace in the world. So if we're trying to, think I want to be compassionate and empathetic, well, the first thing is, as the Lama said, the I gets in the way. I, me. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm not able to. If we were able to even get the I out of the way a little bit, it would become very different. And this was explained very clearly by the Lama, how to not see things in a very rigid kind of solid way, but to see the emptiness or the lack of inherent solid quality to myself, to what I'm doing, or to the recipient of what I'm doing, whether it's a dog or a human, to allow a little flexibility and fluidity, one might say, in the situation. And also, we take ourselves so seriously, don't we? We really take ourselves so seriously, meaning, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What a big deal. Even if we're not advertising it on, Facebook, what I did this morning, or talking about it like I did on this session, even if we're not advertising it, we're still thinking about it and thinking, yeah, I'm a pretty good guy, I'm a pretty good guy. So that's not bad, but it's getting in the way of the kind of action that could be spontaneous and without exhaustion. Of course, sometimes we get exhausted also because we're just not skillful. We think we can go on and not take proper food and rest. We read some story in the sutras about some bodhisattva doing something amazing, and we try and do it. We can't do it yet. We can't be Milarepa. We can't go and lie down next to a hungry tigress and offer our body for her to eat. We just can't do it yet. If we pretend we can, we're stupid. We're unskillful. So if we can't manage more than an hour or two of helping others a day, that's great. Just do an hour or two. Do half an hour and build up. Who says we can or have to save the world immediately? We can't. So often we're just so unskillful, so pushy. Because, why? Because basically we don't appreciate ourselves. We feel impoverished. So we try and fill the gap in a very extreme manner by pushing. Some people push other people. They nag other people, right? And then most of us also nag ourselves. Or, of course, sometimes we're just so lazy, we don't bother. But although you got to do this, you got to do that, You haven't, as he said, we have quota almost, the Lama said, didn't he? We have, how many people do I help today? How many people did I help yesterday? That kind of, and then trying to build up as though it's some kind of, powerlifting. You're increasing the weights every day in the gym. That's not how we benefit others, is it? If we keep tabs like that, of course we're going to get exhausted. The day we can't even help a hungry dog because we feel wretched or upset, that's the day we'll start, poisoning our mind with self-recrimination and thinking we're useless. Of course we'll get exhausted. So the natural empathy and compassion maybe only arises when we are calm and clear and a little bit, taking care of ourselves. One thing that struck me when I was reading as a teenager 50 years ago in England was I was reading the Gita, because I was reading different traditions' texts. And reading the Gita, one passage I like very much, I didn't appreciate so much the ones which were so, about God and this and that, but one passage where it just says yoga is a harmony. Yoga is a harmony, not eating too much, too little, something like that. Maybe chapter 6, I can't remember now. And of course, it wasn't a translation by an Indian saint or scholar, it was by a Western mystic, Juan Mascaro, in the Penguin Classics series. Beautiful books, but of course, it may not have been totally accurate. But yoga is a harmony, right? And yoga here meaning the attempt to unite ourselves with reality or with God or whatever you take as the highest principle. So it's a harmony, though. It's not a pushing. It's not a pull-push. It's not a nagging, It's not power yoga. Now we like power yoga. Classical yoga is not power yoga. I mean, even the heart yoga, the physical yoga, it's much more harmonious and gentle and in tune with breathing and so forth, right? It can be tough, of course. The teacher can push us, and I'm not saying it's slow motion, but you know what I mean? Yoga is a harmony. So how many of us can say our lives are harmonious? We're having a good diet, good sleep, good attitude, following some of the wisdom of, say, Ayurveda, which is so skillful about how to eat, sleep, when to do this, when to do that. How many of us are harmonious? How many of us are getting enough time in nature or with things that we love to do? And how many of us are just feel that we are on the treadmill like a rat in the rat race? And I'm not exaggerating. When people came to Tushita some years ago, and they were very good people, they were so upset at being part of the rat race. They were in the corporate sector. But they said it's very hard to leave, because if we leave, then what? There was the fear. What happens when we leave? What will we do? Gone is that era when there were far less people on the planet, and it's somehow, I don't know, of course, there were still famines and starvation in those days, but somehow there wasn't that tension about having to, well, I don't know, maybe I better check that. But I was going to say, not so much tension and fear about not having a job for a while. Or maybe corporate sector makes you feel that, yeah, you have to be in this sector and make a lot of money every week. Otherwise, what are you doing with your life? And what will you have when you're older? What's life without being able to go to the coffee shop 3-4 times a week or more? Splurge 600 rupees on a coffee and a sandwich. What would that life be like? Can I face it? Anyway, just giving you food for thought. Yeah, I can see your hand, Anushree. You'll have to be patient. So, does that begin to answer your question? So we have to be skillful and kind and take it easy. Not in the sense of neglecting ourselves and others, but, just not being so uptight. We're so uptight. People are so uptight, I find, this is my prejudice saying this, they can't even put a sentence together without either saying it in too much of a hurry or, mixing up the words, or they don't really know what they want to say, but they're speaking anyway. And so it takes them 5 minutes to ask something that someone who's thinking clearly could ask in maybe 20 seconds. You know what I mean? Most of us are like that. we are just not clear and calm and kind enough to ourselves, let alone the environment. I mean, what was I reading? Supreme Court justification for allowing certain businesses and so forth to destroy nature in certain places. They said we have looked at the balance of, protecting nature and also providing industry and opportunities in rural areas where they don't have the same opportunity as urban people. So what, you want the villages to be like urban places? Is that what you're saying? That the kind of development we have in towns should be extended to villages because that's what townspeople have? Are you crazy? Yes, people are crazy. They should read more Gandhi. They should read Schumacher, E.F. Schumacher, the great Small is Beautiful. They should read those kind of things. And as Ashok Mitra, who is the famous chief economist of India at one point, the Bengali, Ashok Mitra, maybe. In his book, one of his books, which of course is a very scurrilous anti-establishmentarian book, could get people in jail if they read it too much, but he says most economists should be tied up. They should be put in jail where they belong. Most economists, who are just statisticians anyway, totally out of touch with people. And sorry, I'm on a roll at the moment. This is my prejudice. You can ignore it all. But the subtitle to Schumacher's book was an amazing subtitle. The main title was Small is Beautiful. Subtitle, Economics as if People Mattered. People matter. And people can't survive without nature. If the Supreme Court thinks that you're doing it for people, to dig up all the countryside and make vast roads so that some people can get somewhere quicker, 2 hours quicker, then I think we've lost it. We've lost our balance. We've lost our harmony. That's why the Gita says yoga is a harmony. We've lost our harmony within ourselves, and therefore what we project outside is disharmonious. This would be my contention, and people can check for themselves. But then you have to read a few things. You have to actually read what Schumacher says in his chapter, Buddhist Economics, in his book, for example. He was a Christian, but he wrote one of the best chapters on Buddhist economics ever, probably, because he was a good Christian. So therefore, if you're a good Christian, you probably understand Buddhism very well. And if you're a good Buddhist, so-called, you probably understand Christ, Christianity pretty well. Better than the arms manufacturers who go to church every Sunday, etc. Or even us who come to Tushita every Sunday. Spend the rest of the week on the treadmill. Anyway, yeah, enough. 2 hands are up. Anushri's was first. Let's see if Anushri can ask her question briefly. Go ahead, Anushri, and I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So, Geshe-la, in...
Hello? Anushri? Oops, Andhra is a long way away.
Kabirji, can you hear me now? Okay, so Geshe-la, in his talk, he used 2 things which I want to ask. So one is analysis of virtue. So how do we analyze virtue? And the second thing he said was the problem is not that we want to understand God, but that we want to understand God on our own terms. So what does that mean?
Please think about that yourself. The second part, you please think yourself. The first one is a very long question. The answer to your second question is everything is on our terms. I look at everything on my own terms. I look at everything around me on my own terms, meaning according to my conditioning. If I was a Zen priest, I would look at all this stuff and say, wow, these Tibetan Buddhists have too much on the wall. They have too many statues. They have too many. They turn Buddha into a god. That's what a Zen priest might say. Someone who hasn't, had any contact with Tibetan Buddhists, and he or she'll be a bit horrified. This is not Buddhism. I say, what? People with swords in their hand? That's not Buddhism. So it depends who you are, yeah? How you interpret God and everything, how you interpret Buddha. You might say, oh, Buddha, I didn't know Buddha had earrings and so many colorful clothes. I thought Buddha was very simple. Robes like the Sri Lankan monks, and the Tibetans say no, he's like he has maroon robes, and yeah, you see what I'm saying? Your first question, you have to analyze through your own wisdom what brings lasting happiness and what doesn't. You have to first look at the Google translation of virtue, and then you look in a good Buddhist book on what is the meaning of virtue. So virtue is something which brings lasting happiness and which begins to release you from the force field of samsara, the gravitational pull of samsara. So anything beyond, I would say, just to give you something to think about, anything that goes beyond the 8 worldly feelings is likely to be a virtue, a very powerful virtue. Anything caught up with pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, good reputation, bad reputation is not virtuous. And in any case, anything not conjoined with emptiness can be virtuous, but it won't have the ability to confer liberation, as you know very well from your studies. If just a good action is good, leads to good karma, happy result in the jail of samsara. But if you want to be free of the jail of samsara, as you know, we have to understand ultimate truth. We have to conjoin our practice with shunyata, understanding. Yeah. Clear?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayaji, please show your face or I'm not going to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, so no, it was not a question actually.
Not a question?
Yeah, just
an insult, maybe an insult? Or...
No, just an image that came to mind when you were talking about the corporate rat race. Just, a metaphor from the field itself. My brother, I checked with him on why not take early retirement because they're constantly exhausted, he and his wife. He says, he says it's like riding a tiger, and once you're afraid that the tiger is going to eat you once you get off. So I thought it was a very powerful, analogy for the
There's
fear.
a poem about that, a wonderful poem, and a smile on the face of the tiger. You would know that, English professor. What was that poem? Or was it a limerick? It was a limerick.
I'm not aware of that one, but I thought it was very interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it captures the fear and the whole, story about power, right? It's a power thing.
No, it's also something else, isn't it?
Fear of losing that power and control.
Why? Why is there fear of losing?
Well, I think it's also, just practically speaking, it's about literally the power of being a CEO and having money and
so what's that connected with? Sorry,
with the notion of the self.
Yes, exactly.
Which derives validation from this, which has no other way of validating itself except through all of this. So
correct. That's right. We're so bound up with these things. We cannot let go.
Yeah.
I am what I do. I am what I earn. I am what other people think of me, isn't it? Especially that one in India. I am what other people think of me.
Yeah.
So if my in-laws, my parents, my brother, sister think good things, then I'm okay. If they're not, then I'm bereft. Then I have a big problem. Then I get depressed. Even if my best friend says something not nice to me, I just lose it for days on end because we've invested so much in what other people, and that's connected with praise and blame. With the eight.
Also, I think this is pretty international, the middle class notion of success.
Now, don't get too Marxist now on this show, but you're right. Absolutely.
It is. It's American. I see it with Americans. I see it with others as well. You're brought up to think that you are how much you earn and the possessions you have and the markers of success are defined by earning capacity. It's not.
You think that's why it's difficult to go to the forest, because the trees or the birds, and then they're not going to, what's the word? Affirm you. They're not going to congratulate you for anything. They might just, dropping doing droppings on your head and mosquitoes biting you until one gets used to it, then, there's no, what's the word? There's no thing coming from nature initially.
Validation, yeah.
No validation.
No
Or
recognition.
Yeah.
Your status, your status is, actually birds also drop on statues of great men. That's another very interesting thing to think about.
What happens?
This obsession with building statues as a way of marking greatness, great leaders.
Yes.
They're basically, toilets for birds, if you think about them.
We have to build a bigger Buddha than Sardar Patel, I think.
So that's another.
We'd build it on a mountain, it'd be higher. Yeah, you're right. In the Mahayana, it is said it is good to build statues, but of course, as the speaker so beautifully said on Friday, at a certain point, you go beyond any yana, you go beyond Mahayana. Yeah. You don't carry the raft with you once you've crossed to the other shore. You let it go. That's very hard for us to accept. It's like being a naked sadhu at the Kumbh. Very difficult to let go and be that kind of open, without, of course, doing it as an exhibitionist, just to be naturally open. Very difficult. So we can't let go of our props, what Trungpa Rinpoche calls our reference points. And my reference points, one of the most important for me, are books. I've turned my house into a kind of library, and which I hope will be very beneficial for others. But it is one of my reference points. If all my books were to burn down, yeah, you wouldn't be seeing me on Zoom for a few weeks, that's for sure. I would be in therapy. Such are the power of those reference points. Although I did make a start a few years ago by giving away some of my favorite history books from university, and that was something. It didn't shock me too much. But yeah, reference points are so powerful. So powerful. Like giving up a job or giving up, understanding you are transitioning from middle age to old age. Any kind of transition which involves a letting go of something. Very difficult because it hurts the self-image, right? Unless, of course, you're ready for it. Some people who are male feel they should be female, or some females feel they should be male, so they have a sex change operation. That's different. A very powerful karma forcing you to do that, or impelling you. But say someone forcibly converted you, wanted to operate on you and said, I'll kill you unless you allow me to change you from a woman into a man. Wouldn't be easy, right? Or vice versa, for most people. Some might say, oh, thank God, I always wanted to be a man. I didn't know. And some might say, thank God, I wanted to be a woman. I didn't know. But most of us, we couldn't change. I mean, I couldn't donate my little finger for a good cause, let alone anything bigger. So yeah, this is all bound up with identity. And the Four Immeasurables hurt the ego, don't they? If we were to practice them properly, we're hurting the ego by saying, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, not feeling close to some and distant from others. May they abide in this way. I myself will cause them to abide in this way, etc. Not easy. Or it might be easy to think other people should do it, but me, I can't do it. I have some people I consider very close. I can't at the moment engage in the same kind of feelings towards them as I do, towards neutral and other people. And there are some people I don't like. Although, luckily, there's nobody I think I hate. But there are some people I don't like. I wouldn't invite them to tea. Or for tea and scones at Elmer's in Horsecast Village, for example. I wouldn't invite them there, but yeah, I might give them a Marie Gold biscuit if I had to. I wouldn't spend hundreds of rupees on them. You know what I mean? Samira ji, anything? Long time no see. If it's the Samira, I think. But who knows behind that rectangle what is lurking? Or Ashita, Chirag. Ah, it is you. Welcome. You are in a purple face. Oh, your curtain's purple. Look a bit purple. That's lovely. Yeah, I'm in another phase. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you.
Good, good. I hope the session wasn't too draining on your on patience or whatever. Something useful.
Not at all. I would like to come for all the sessions and I miss them. So, quite the contrary.
Right. Thank you. Naveenji, anything? You're in Australia. It must be very late. No, not late yet. It's
no, it's not late, Kabirji. I'm just listening.
It's 6 o'clock. Around 6.
Yeah, almost. Not quite there yet. Yeah. Thank you.
And whoever, Anjali, Ashita, Neeraj, anything? As we come back to the real people here at Tushita. Namaskar, namaskar. No? Okay. 12:30, well, an hour and a half. 50% longer than psychotherapists give you. They give you an hour and they charge, goodness me, they charge a lot. So anyway, this wasn't psychotherapy, but hopefully kind of, I think just if we realize that sometimes part of the day we should slow down, pay attention, and often it's best to do by ensuring you can get up early and go out and look at the world. Look at animals, people, nature. Hopefully none of you are too far away from some nature. It can be very useful and nourishing to do that. Because then later in the day it gets difficult, and then at night you're tired or it's dark. But morning is good, which means not too much partying the night before or binge watching, which is a problem. My aunt and I like to occasionally watch more than one episode of a serial. This can become dangerous. I had to tell her yesterday, number 3, no way. 2 is enough.
What was it that you were watching?
What were we watching? I can't remember. What were we watching? Hold on. I should remember, right? We watched 2 episodes of it. Treason on Netflix. Very British. That's why I like it. British accents, British actors, familiar landscapes. But I don't recommend it highly. It's a waste of time, actually. But especially if you spend 44 times 2 minutes on it. Actually, we're watching it during the day. Any time of day, it's a waste of time. Unless you're watching it with a very discerning eye of lam rim and compassion, which I tend to forget in the middle because I have decided who is the enemy and who is the goodie. So that's a problem. है ना नीरज भाई, क्योंकि हमेशा दुश्मन होता है और अच्छे लोग होते हैं और दुश्मन होते हैं. But luckily the acting is usually quite good in these serials and the casting is good. So it's interesting to watch some of the people. It can be very interesting just to watch good acting. And it's pretty good, most of them, pretty good. Yeah. So in June, I have to do some retreat and I'll be confessing a lot of this Netflix watching. That will be one of the things I do. What else? Chirag ji? Chirag? Who is Chirag? I can't. Chirag ji? Chirag, I know Chirag Enclave, but Chirag. Anyway, I'm sure I've seen you. I can't remember. Okay. Welcome. It's nice to see a face. Yes. Anything from people here at Tushita? Sorry, we didn't go painstakingly through each of the 4 immeasurables, but we can work towards it. We can look at it tomorrow.
I think the question which was raised on the compassion and empathy. Yes, I think all the texts, all the teaching that we have to cultivate compassion. And when the experiments are done on that, they found that the people are getting too exhausted. And a lot of emphasis now put on the self-compassion. I think one of the great experiments done by is the Christian Mayer from the Harvard University. And today I find that she is well talked everywhere. And her book is on the self-compassion practice. But further going down, they're saying that people like, I don't remember with David Richardson and Matthew Ricard, or Daniel Coleman and Matthew Ricard. Matthew Ricard is definitely there. They're saying that, it's not really the compassion which is exhausting, it is the empathy. And they are using the word, the empathy depression.
Empathy?
Depression.
Depression.
Yeah.
Empathy, depression.
So the depression or the exhaustion is not really in the compassion, but in the empathy.
Because why? One is
because one is
investing too much. Yeah.
And I was really reflecting, yes, I think the Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi also said that the compassion is like recharging. I mean, it's always there. I think if one is really attaining the state of the Buddha on that mind, it will never be exhausted. Is
that because it's conjoined with wisdom? Or is there something about compassion itself?
Compassion is the wisdom, is the nature itself. It's like the sun would never get exhausted. It would be always moving. The ocean would never dry up. It may change. So
but is that compassion our basic nature or something to be cultivated?
Yeah. I mean, there are the two ways of looking at it. Some saying that it is to be discovered. Some saying that the potential, it has to be cultivated. I think, like Tenzin Priyadarshi, he said that the Mahayana, they would put more emphasis in the generation. Yeah. Whereas the Theravada, they would put more emphasis on abiding state. So I think, yeah. So I really found that the perspective which is really emerging is quite interesting. Yeah.
So empathy seems to lack the skill, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the wisdom.
Exactly.
It's just a feeling of close, and you become so close that you feel caught in it.
Yeah, getting caught up there.
Like being someone trying to save someone from drowning, but you're not skilled, so you drown with them. That kind of thing. Yeah. And compassion is like a good lifesaver who's worked on other issues.
It's always there. It's always there.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know a little bit.
Yes. I could. Yeah. Makes sense. Because empathy is where you automatically put yourself in that situation and empathize with the other person. And how do you remove the I?
Well, if you properly put yourself in someone else's shoes, then the I is gone. Because I remember very well His Holiness Karmapa at one talk in Delhi. Someone asked him how to cultivate compassion. He said, okay, you go to a slaughter, go to somewhere where the chicken is being slaughtered, and you put yourself in the place of that chicken. How does it feel? Really try and get into it imaginatively. So that is one way.
Yeah, that's right.
But if one does it without any skill, one could become horrified and terrified and, never do that meditation again. Or become very, very violently anti or pro-vegetarian and anti-meat eaters and go around shouting at them, So to do it skillfully, one then has to have some other thing there too, no? Not just imaginatively get into the head of the chicken and become headless, but something else is needed, which is a perspective and a skill. Not to be overwhelmed, not to be overwhelmed. Because otherwise, there's so much to overwhelm us. If I'd been too empathetic, just that dog this morning would have overwhelmed me. It's just sitting there. What can it do all day? What can it do? Other dogs harass it. It doesn't get a nice, nourishing meal ever in its life. Hangs out alone at night, being cold or hot or, whatever. What a life, the whole life. And then when it dies, according to Buddhism, very, very slim chance of having a better kind of rebirth because it hasn't created the cause. It hasn't nourished roots of virtue in this life at all to be able to have a human or higher rebirth again and again and again. Just that kind of life, or worse. So if one gets too much into that, you just become depressed. How could you spend the rest of the day enjoying anything? But we have to realize, okay, that dog also has Buddha nature. Temporary causes and conditions are creating its situation. How do I help anything by becoming depressed and stuck in it, Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are compassionate, and we all of us deliberately, build these walls around us because we want to protect ourselves.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
I've had friends who say, oh no, let's not talk about it because I can't handle it.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's a very convenient excuse for most of us. I can't handle it. Reminds me of a very generous businessman whom I knew in Mumbai, who said, when he goes to the cricket club in Dinchavacha Road, near the Oval Maidan and all, to the Cricket Club of India to have a good meal, he can't face looking at the beggars at the gate. He just can't look at them. Because he's going in a fancy car in to have a very nice meal in the Cricket Club of India. And if he thinks too much about those beggars, ruin his meal. So most people can't look at them. The well-off people of South Mumbai cannot bear to look at the beggars. They just don't look at them. Actually, if you look at a lot of people in cars anyway nowadays who are being driven by others, they're just looking at their smartphones. They're not looking anywhere else.
I think the example that you have really given of the dog, it's easy to relate because it's physical. But if you really see what is really happening in our mind, I think there are thousands of situations really emerging. And somehow they really get accumulated in the mind. And we don't like to really accept that. And somewhere down the line, it's bound to come up.
So I just wanted to share my own dog experience.
Please.
So I have a dog. And there was this one day, this was, I think, during the pandemic when we were all working remotely. And I was just looking at, so my dog is familiar with my routine. He knows that I typically work from X hour, say 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. And he's quietly waiting, under the table near my feet. And 9, he knows that I'm going to get done and it's his dinner time. And then he'll start barking and he wants attention. And one day I just got so consumed by this thought that he's just so dependent on us, for affection, for anything. And if I don't get free by 9, and if I go on working till 12 midnight, then he has no choice but to just wait and wait and wait and wait. And I remember that day I got so consumed by that thought. And I was like, what can I do to make his life better?
And did you figure something out to make his life better?
So more consciously, I take him out to parks, we go to this place, his dog spa where he likes to select his toys, etc. And yes, like on weekends, I make it a point that I take him to Sundar Nursery, or more often during the day, instead of once or twice, as many times as possible, I take him to the park.
Does he like watching TV or something?
He does occasionally, cartoons and wildlife.
Cartoons and wildlife, yeah.
He does.
There's this amazing dog in the marketplace in Horsecast. He sits in front of the chai wala and the newspaper wala. He sits very upright, not on his upright, and just very still, like he's doing shamatha practice. So today I wanted to experiment. He really liked being physically touched. He was really happy because nobody does, but otherwise he's like a shamatha practitioner. Very interesting. He was jumping on. Then later when I left, then he was back to shamatha state. He wasn't affected by my patting him. He just wanted to get back to his practice. Very interesting. Some dogs are very attentive. Of course, they're attentive when they're your dog and they want something at the dinner table, but this one is just looking at the road and what's happening somehow. Very interesting. Many different kinds of dog, right? And moods, quite different from the other one in the dust. Okay, so I think we can stop now. It's almost 1 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for their patience, and sorry if it wasn't what you expected. But do study or go through the Four Immeasurables if you wish. You can find them easily online in different books. And just put, your own wisdom and your experience into it. Remembering what Tenzin Priyadarshiji said, and you can listen to his talk. Even what we're doing today is being recorded and could be listened to later if you really get bored. So that might be helpful. So anyway, let's dedicate now, which is the third of the 3 excellences, to dedicate properly. Otherwise, somehow the good energy just evaporates. So it's like harnessing water from a mountain and then using it for good purpose, irrigation or whatever, drinking. We don't just allow the water to get exhausted and go into the gutter. So here we've created some positive energy just through the intention, even to come to Tushita or to attend online. So some positive energy there. Then we engaged in listening and reflecting and a bit of meditation. Then we engaged in some discussion, hopefully with good intention and with some benefit. So we created some very useful, positive potential, which we can dedicate to the happiness and welfare of all the living beings, and especially to people we know also who are sick or ill or upset or without a guide, who feel their lives are meaningless and so forth. People who are sick, people who are in a state of perpetual fear or anxiety, restlessness. Of course, we must dedicate for world peace, that some people begin to see reason, that the people who are demonstrating against arms being more arms being sent to Ukraine, those people be listened to, realizing that just more destruction, more war is not going to help overall situation, that teaching a lesson to whoever is not going to be the answer. So, and victory in such matters is a ridiculous idea. Nobody wins in a war, really, long term. So may sense and goodness prevail there in the war-torn regions. Make people be able to create some positive karma to have better future. May we never be separated from the holy Dharma and authentic teachings. May all our great teachers have long and healthy lives. May all their holy wishes be fulfilled. May Rinpoche's wishes for Tushita and all the centers in India be fulfilled, especially for those Hindi speakers who do not have much access right now to a lot of teachings. May they find more and more dharma and more access to materials and teachings. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama have long and healthy life. May all his wishes for Tibet, all his wishes for interfaith dialogue and harmony, all his wishes for people to generate bodhicitta, all his aspirations for Indian people especially to rediscover and practice our ancient wisdom culture, all these great aspirations of His Holiness, and also, of course, education, the sea learning, all of that be most successful and beneficial for humanity. May we be inspired by the Bodhisattva way of life, quickly generate bodhicitta and become wish-fulfilling for sentient beings. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. I hope to see some of you tomorrow evening at 6:30.